I think this is the episode that many Hanuman Bhakts especially were looking forward to. When it comes to Sanatan Dharma, any deity with the face of an animal, they're closer to earthly realms and they come to help you much quicker.
Out of everyone, if there's anyone who can do this, it is Shri Hanuman.
Wow. When I say Hanuman Ji, what are you visualizing when it comes to the face?
A forest dweller who puts on some type of a face mask to look like a monkey. Something that they could take off. And also a lot of stories related to the tail. So they also wore a tail.
The fierce love that Hanuman Ji felt for Shri Ram, is that mentioned up to this point?
Remember, he gave his ring to Hanuman. In fact, he said to Lakshman, anyone who has an ambassador like that is a very fortunate king.
Is there anything written about his emotional state of mind?
He was at the lowest point when he...
The moment Hanuman Ji appears in the text, the energy of your own mind changes. Like as we are speaking right now, the energy of the room is so different. Is your understanding of Hanuman Ji also evolving?
The beauty of Valmiki's poetry is such, we know he went swimming. But the image left in our mind is of Hanuman flying through the sky.
Is there anything that's said about his increase in size?
If it was real, would he need to fly or swim? He could have stepped across.
Goosebumps. Nothing is said about Sita Maa at this point. Her reality.
The Rakshas surrounding Sita threatened her very clearly. We are going to cut you up. And they were discussing who will eat which part and that they should divide the parts equally and so on.
Why didn't Sita Maa just go away with Hanuman Ji?
Hanuman asks her, why don't you come with me? She says,
This is a very special part 3 of our 4-part special on the Ramayana. If you haven't seen the first 2 parts, that's okay. This one is centered around the legend of Hanuman. I think that Hanumanji, as well as the Ramayana in general, isn't completely understood by most Indian audiences. In today's episode, we welcome Yashodeep Deodhar sir again, who has dedicated his life to the study of the Valmiki Ramayana, the actual and only honest retelling of the story of the Ramayana, the legend that actually took place, the itihas or history of India. This 4-part series has been made with a lot of pure intention. The final episode is going to release in 2 days' time, and this double whammy that we have this week concludes our retelling of the Ramayana for the 2025 audience in podcast form. The intention is for all of these 4 episodes to be relevant for the next 50 years. So if you're someone who's clicked on this episode for Hanumanji and his secrets, of course, you're going to find the real description of his role in the Ramayana. And trust me, there's a lot of myths that will be broken over the course of these 2 episodes. This is our Hanuman special in our Ramayana series with Yashodeep Deodhar sir. And it begins right now. Jai Shri Ram. Jai Shri Ram, Jai Hanuman.
Jai Shri Ram, Jai Hanuman.
Welcome back, sir. This epic series has reached episode 3. How are you, sir?
Very good, thank you.
I think this is the episode that many Hanuman Bhakts especially were looking forward to the most, perhaps, of the whole series. This is where Hanumanji gets introduced. Let's just start with a tiny recap and review on the first 2 episodes of our series. How are you feeling about it?
Wonderful. Great to be back here and to narrate the original Valmiki Ramayana.
Itihasa.
Yes. And, in terms of what you asked about a recap, I think 2 or 3 important points to remember as we get into episode 3. The first is that this is the Valmiki Ramayana. It may be a bit different from the popularly known versions of the Ramayana. But if the question is what really happened, then the reference text is the Valmiki Ramayana, because this is the itihas. Also, in the very first episode, you had asked me the question, why did Maharishi Valmiki write it? And I think that's important to keep in mind throughout our discussion. Maharshi Valmiki wrote this because he wanted to set the highest example of what it means to be a good human being. He had started off with the question, Kon vasmin sampratam loke, who in the world lives today, who has the following qualities? And really the qualities were universal human values. Right? So that's the objective, that we have in front of us the highest example of behavior, and we keep that example in front of us and be the best that we can be. Right? So that's the purpose. Now, in terms of the qualities, the great qualities that he talked about, earlier on, Shri Ram exemplified acceptance. On the day that he was sent into exile for no fault of his, and he was the rightful successor, he went from having it all, lordship over the entire world, to having nothing at all, for no fault of his again. It was unfair to him, but he accepted it without any anger, without any irritation, right? So he exemplified acceptance. In the last conversation we had, we saw his reaction when Sita was kidnapped. That was not the time for acceptance. He did not say, oh, it is Sita's karma, so she got abducted. It is my karma to go back to Ayodhya. No. He said, I will find out wherever she may be and I will get her back safely. Right? This was the time for action. And he exemplified that. We spoke a bit about karma as well. So Shri Ram is exemplifying that yes, acceptance is important, but only after you have done everything possible, all possible actions. And that is what they are setting out to do right now. So in the last conversation, Sita got kidnapped. Ram and Lakshman are coming south to find her. And they have been told that they must meet Sugriv at the Rishyamukh mountain, and he will be able to help them find her.
Could you draw out a visual again, a geographical visual as well as an aesthetic visual? What are we supposed to visualize here?
Okay. So geographically, they started in northern India, in Ayodhya, where the story started. And then into exile, they came straight south towards Shringaverpur, crossed over the Ganga, went to the confluence of Ganga and Yamuna at Prayag. From there, they crossed the Yamuna as well and came to Chitrakoot. They spent some time at Chitrakoot. Afterwards, they came to Panchavati, which is in western India, not too far from here, at Nasik. Sita was kidnapped at Panchavati, and Ravan has taken her south. That's what we know from Jatayu. So they start coming south, and now we are in the vicinity of Hampi in modern-day Karnataka, Rishyamukh mountain and Pampa lake. So that's the geographic layout. And in terms of visuals, if you've been to Hampi, this is a landscape of boulders and some forests, huge boulders, reddish brown in color, dark brown, and also forests. So in this mountainous area near the Pampa lake, also near the Tungabhadra river, will be the story of today's podcast.
Have you been to Hampi?
Yes. And to the Rishyamukh mountain.
Oh,
yes. Wow. So searching for Sita, they come towards Pampa lake. And this is where the first sarga of the Kishkindha Kand starts. This is the stunningly beautiful Pampa lake in spring, Vasant Ritu.
How do you feel there?
The Pampa lake that they show today is, and we will see the descriptions of the Pampa lake. It's much smaller, what we see today, compared to the descriptions that we've had. So surely there's been some change over time.
Okay, let's move on in the story.
Right. Maharshi Valmiki describes the beauty of Pampa. At the same time, for Shri Ram, there is no joy in all this. Only the searing heartache of Sita's loss. So Shri Ram is describing the beauty of Pampa to Lakshman. At the same time, he's feeling pain as well. It's a very beautiful sarga. Shri Ram says, look at those crystal clear waters of the Pampa. How the wind smacks the water, creates ripples. And then because of the ripples, the lotuses dash against one another. And he's reminded of Sita. He says, Sita loves the lotuses. Her eyes are just like lotus petals. The wind comes whistling out of the mountain valley. It shakes the trees and then seems to play with the flowers. And when The wind comes with its fragrance. Shri Ram is reminded of Sita. So he says, this wind is just like Sita's breath. But this cool, fragrant wind burns me like fire because it reminds me of Sita. So everything that is joyful is giving him pain. He says, look at the peacocks. Beautiful feathers, shining brilliantly. But of course he'll be dancing. His beloved has not been captured by a Rakshas. And how the peahen comes up to him. If Sita was here, she too would have come up to me.
What role is Lakshman Ji playing here?
Here, Ram is describing all this to Lakshman through these words.
But in general?
In general, see, even now we will see Shri Ram will sink further and further into despair. And it is Lakshman who pulls him out of that. Yes, Shri Ram's character is the ideal, and yes, he is very strong, but even he needs support and help at that time, and which is what Lakshman gives him.
This is probably the weakest point for Shri Ram in the entire story, right?
Sita's loss shook him like nothing else. Yes.
What is spoken about his mind in this phase?
We will see now, as well as with Sugriv, he sinks into grief many times, but he always comes out of it. And I think that's also a learning. Last time we spoke about how Sita came back from her lows. This time we will see that Shri Ram also comes back from his lows. So does Sita, and so does Hanuman. So yes, it is natural for us to be emotional at times, to get overwhelmed. But the lesson of the Ramayana is that we can always come back and overcome and channel our emotions into purposeful action.
Okay. Right before we started rolling, you were telling me something as a bit of a personal recap on the first 2 episodes. Would you like to repeat what you told me?
I was watching some of the viewer reactions and comments, and I think they were happy with the change we made in the second episode. So it's good that we were able to do that. I was also thinking that we would love to hear on some of the substantive points of our discussion as well. How it affects the viewers in their own lives. I've had some comments like this. There was some person, a youngster who was preparing for his PG NEET exam, and he found some of the inspirational parts of the Ramayana, something that he wanted to listen to every day in order to support his or aid his preparation, right? So what role does it play in our day-to-day lives, in guiding us, in inspiring us? Would love to hear more about that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're nudging the audience here to drop a comment with some kind of positive feedback as well, in terms of what have they liked about this series, what else would they like covered now in the 4th episode. But our intention here is to, 1, document the story, and 2, kind of present the story in a new light to the younger generations. Like Yashodeep sir and myself, we were talking about Ramanand Sagar's Ramayana, which was from the 1980s, and then B.R. Chopra's Mahabharata from the 1990s. We were also talking about the anime of the Ramayana, and those are the visual reference points for my generation especially, and I would also say for your generation.
Yes, right? Extremely popular, yes.
So we are hoping that this series becomes a bit of a reference point for the newer generation. That's all. Okay. Any final inputs to the audience before we move forward in the story?
Thank you for joining us.
Okay. Let's move forward then, sir.
Essentially, Ram said, Yani smaramani taya sah bhavanti me, tanyeva aramani jayante me taya vina. Whatever was endearing, joyful for me when Sita was with me has no joy, means nothing to me now that she's not here. Shri Ram was also worried sick for Sita. How would she bear this ordeal of captivity? And he told Lakshman that Sita always stood by me. Even when I was sent into exile with nothing, she supported me. And even in exile, when I felt low, she would cheer me up with her pleasant words and beautiful smile. Shri Ram is again reminded, and he said, Vaidehya vakyamatulam kada shroshyami Lakshmana. O Lakshman, when will I hear Sita's sweet voice once again? I cannot live without her. If I don't see her, my life is meaningless. But if I can be with her, I will not wish for anything else in the world, not even Ayodhya. Sprihayeyam na Ayodhyayai. This first sarga of the Kishkindha-kand by the banks of Pampa is a very long one. And Valmiki is telling us again and again about Sri Ram's longing for Sita. I think it's absolutely clear. Maharishi Valmiki is telling us, let there be no doubt about how dearly Sri Ram loved Sita. But his longing was turning into despair. And you'd asked before, what was Lakshman's role? He came in right here. He told Ram, pull yourself up. This is not who you are. You cannot grieve like this. We have to focus on doing. I will find Ravan. We will get Sita back. And this is what pulled Ram out of his, despair. And the two came towards Rishyamukh mountain looking for Sugriv. And now we shall meet Sugriv, the Vanaras, and the greatest among them, Shri Hanuman.
Is anything said about the Vanaras before this point? Any kind of description? Because I'm assuming that when one is reading the story, a description would help one visualize the Vanaras before they actually appear.
Right in the beginning, in the Balakand, there is a reference. When Valmiki gives us the context, and he has some references about the Vanaras, that all the Vanaras were, spread throughout the land in the mountains and the forests and so on. So he has given us some references in the Balakand, the first book of the Ramayana. But really, if you were acting it out, right, if you were doing a stage performance of the Ramayana, then this is where the Vanaras come in.
Okay.
So Sugriv and Hanuman are watching Ram and Lakshman come towards Rishyamukh. They watch from a distance, and Sugriv is suspicious because they are dressed like ascetics, but they are carrying arms. He tells Hanuman, they may have been sent by my brother Vali. Go and speak to them and find out why they are here. And go in your natural human form. Prakritenaiva gatva. And so Hanuman took off his monkey attire and went dressed as an ascetic. Kapirupam parityajya bhikshurupam tato bheje.
Let's pause it a little bit here.
Yes. Because this is, I'm sure you have the question, what is this monkey attire?
Yes. I mean, I think we've spoken about it in our first ever interaction before this series. I'd love for you to repeat this part.
Okay, sure. And we had a fairly long conversation there where many individual shlokas and verses I had quoted.
Because I think the visual reference point for all Indians who have heard the Ramayana is that Hanuman Ji was some kind of a divine ape-like being. That's what you always end up visualizing.
Right.
Him with that very peculiar ape-like mouth. But you're saying that in the actual Valmiki Ramayana, it is actually a reference to attire when they're speaking about ape-like appearance. So perhaps there is a mouthpiece, there is a tail.
So let me recap, or summarize the discussion, the longer discussion we had earlier. Essentially, the Vanaras were forest dwellers who dressed up like monkeys. Humans who dressed up like monkeys. They were not a different race, and they also had the same cultural roots as the people who lived in the cities and janpads. Now, I will, break down each of these parts for you. The word Vanar in Hindi means bandar, right? And so, why not monkey? The word says so. And Valmiki has also used the word Kapi, Hari, Plavangamaha, Shakhamrugaha. All of these are used to denote monkeys. However, all of these are adjectives. So, Plavangamaha, although used to denote a monkey, actually means those who leap. So, even humans who leap can be called Plavangamaha. And interestingly, Valmiki has also used the words Nari, Jana, Stri and Purush for the Vanaras. He has also called them Vanavasinaha, Kananaukasaha, Vanaukasaha, all of which means forest-dwelling people. So on one hand, he has called them Nari, Jana, Stri, Purush, humans. On the other hand, Vanaraha, Plavangamaha. Essentially, they were humans who dressed up like monkeys. Even today, forest dwellers, we see sometimes put on feathers or horns to dress up like some chosen animal.
Okay. Because you have given so much of your own time, energy, and life to the Ramayana, I would love to ask you a little tangential question.
Okay.
When I say Hanuman Ji to you or Sugriv, what are you visualizing when it comes to the face?
A forest dweller who puts on some type of a face mask to look like a monkey. Similar to, like I said, some forest dwellers would put on feathers or other accessories, something that they could take off. Because even now, Sugriv is telling him, take off the monkey attire. Kapirupam parityajya. So it is something that they could take off. And also, a lot of stories related to the tail. So they also wore a tail.
Gotcha. And specifically when it comes to Hanumanji, I am pretty sure that visually there would be something very different about him as compared to the other Vanars. On some level, it could just be his human face would have had a bit more tej, like tej is radiance. That's the translation. One more question to Yashodeep Deodhar and not Shri Valmiki.
Uh-huh.
What are you visualizing when it comes to Hanumanji's face?
So definitely he was the greatest of them all. He was well versed in the Vedas, Shastras, and there's something very special about him. And we'll see what he does in the Kishkindha-kand and Sunderkand. But in terms of powers, let's say, or he is like the Vanaras, but the greatest among them. So you asked me visually, if you see, even if you go to ancient temples, for example, and you look at sculptures, Hanuman, Vali, Sugriv, other Vanaras are all shown similarly. So you can't make out from just their size or proportion. Also, interestingly, in some of the temples, their size and proportion is the same as the size and proportion of Shri Ram and Lakshman. Right? So perhaps even those sculptors were indicating that these are humans who dressed up like monkeys.
Gotcha.
Another example, we spoke about this. There were Vanaras who were born to rishis. And some specific examples have been given. Maharshiputram Maricham Archishmantam Mahakapim. So Archishman was the son of Rishi Marichi and he was a Vanar. So they became Vanaras. It was a lifestyle that they chose. Clearly not a different species, right? I mean, you are saying that they were born to rishis. Some of the people of Ayodhya were born to rishis. And Ravan as well. His father was a rishi. So there is no racial difference and definitely not a different species. And then finally, also that their cultural roots were not different because Shri Hanuman was also an expert on the Vedas and Shastras and so on. So Sugriv tells, go and speak to them and find out. Hanuman comes up to them and asks them who they are. Lakshman says, we come as friends. He tells Hanuman the background and says, we are looking for Sita and we have been told that Sugriv will be able to help us find her. Hanuman says, I'm delighted to meet you because Sugriv also needs help. His brother has thrown him out of the kingdom and forcibly taken his wife. I will take you to meet him. When they go to meet Sugriv, Hanuman introduces them and says they come as friends. Sugriv says, I'm honored by your proposal. And then Ram and Sugriv solemnize their alliance or bond of friendship by doing a pradakshina around fire, Agni. Sugriv tells Ram, my brother has thrown me out of the kingdom and taken my wife, forcibly taken my wife. Ram says, Valinam tam vadishyami tava bharya paharinam. I will kill this Vali who has abducted your wife. Very important words. We will see later that when Ram kills Vali, there are many questions. Even today people have this in mind. Why did he kill? Did he do the right thing? Right now he has stated the intention. He has said, I will kill Vali for what he has done to your wife. Sugriv said, I have also heard from Hanuman that you are looking for Sita. Don't worry, I will find her for you. We will get her back. In fact, the other day, I saw a Rakshas going away with a lady. And she was screaming, Oh Ram, oh Lakshman. And she dropped some ornaments. I've kept them with me. I'll show them to you and you can check if they are hers. You remember when Ravan was going away with Sita, Sita wanted to drop some clues for Ram and Lakshman. And she dropped some of her ornaments in a piece of her clothing, Uttariya, near the Vanaras. And these were the Vanaras. So Sugriv had kept these ornaments and gave them to Sri Ram. They were wrapped in Sita's Uttariya. Sri Ram opened the cloth and inside were Sita's ornaments. He clutched them to his heart, fell down to his knees. His eyes clouded with tears and his throat choked, and he told Lakshman, "Look, Sita's jewelry." But Lakshman said, "I cannot recognize some of this jewelry." Lakshman's answer is legendary, very famous, shown in many sculptures and paintings. He says, "I cannot recognize some of this jewelry." I'll tell you what he says after this, but before that, the context. When they were going for exile in Dashrath's court, Lakshman's mother, Sumitra, had told him, "Ramam Dashratham Viddhi, Mam Viddhi Janakatmajam, Ayodhyam Atavim Viddhi, Gacchatat Yatha Sukham." Treat Ram as your father. Treat Sita as your mother. The forest is now Ayodhya for you. Go forth, my child, be well. And Lakshman had done that for all these years in exile. He had served Ram and Sita like a father and mother. He had given up 14 years of his life to support them. And then, on the day that Sita had got kidnapped, you would remember the harsh and unfair words that she had said to him. In a fit of anger, admittedly. But she had said, "You have an eye on me, don't you? And you have desired me all this while." What a thing to say to Lakshman. After all these years. Now with that context, you will be able to appreciate Lakshman's answer. He says, "I cannot recognize some of this jewelry. Naham janami keyure, naham janami kundale, nupure tu abhijanami, nityam pada bhivandanat." I cannot recognize these armbands. I also cannot recognize these earrings. But I do recognize these anklets, for I have always bowed at her feet. Shri Ram was sinking further into grief once again upon seeing Sita's jewelry. This time, Sugriv pulled him out. He gave him courage. Then Shri Ram asked him, "What happened between you and Vali? You are brothers." And then Sugriv told his backstory. Sugriv and Vali were brothers. Vali was the elder one. When their father, the king of the Vanaras, passed away, Vali inherited the kingdom. He was the elder one, capable and popular, and Sugriv was happy to serve under him. But then there was a misunderstanding between the two, and Vali thought that Sugriv had tried to kill him and usurp the kingdom. And so he threw him out and forcibly took Ruma, Sugriv's wife. Sugriv said, "Please help me." But he also said, "Vali is extremely powerful. How will you be able to face him?" Lakshman smiled and he said, "What can Ram do to convince you?" Sugriv looked around and pointed to a row of 7 trees. They were all in a line, and he said, "If Ram can fire an arrow at any of these, and with just one arrow, split the tree, then I'll be convinced that he can take on Vali." Shri Ram took an arrow, loaded it on his bow, pulled the bowstring hard, and shot the arrow with such force that it split not one, but all 7 sal trees, one after the other. Sugriv was stunned and convinced. And so, all of them set off for Kishkinda, the capital of the Vanaras. Sugriv went to the gates of the capital. The others stood hidden behind the trees in the forest. Sugriv challenged Vali, taunted him to come out and fight with him. Vali came out, boiling with fury, and the two started fighting. They were throwing punches and kicks at each other. Sugriv was powerful, but slowly Vali began to get the upper hand. Sugriv looked for Ram to help, but Ram didn't do anything. And then Sugriv lost his nerve. He ran back to Rishyamukh. When the others came, Sugriv was embarrassed. And he told Ram, "Why didn't you help me? I thought we had a plan. I would draw Vali out and then you would kill him. Why did you get me beaten up like this?" Ram said, "You two look exactly like each other. I did not know which one was Vali, and so I could not shoot my arrow. Listen, let's do this again. This time, you wear something around your neck. Why don't you wear that creeper, the Gajapushpi creeper with flowers, so that I know it's you?" Sugriv did that, and they went back to Rishyamukh. Once again, the others were hiding in the forest. Sugriv taunted Vali to come out. Vali was about to come out, but Vali's wife, Tara, stopped him. She said, "This is very suspicious. Sugriv came, challenged you, got beaten up, ran away, and now he's back. Surely there's somebody helping him. And I have heard from our spies that someone is Ram, the Prince of Ayodhya. He is invincible. Don't go against him. And I also think you should bring Sugriv back. He has done nothing wrong. Please appoint him as your successor." But Vali did not listen to Tara, and he came out of the city to fight Sugriv. Once again, the two started fighting, landing blows on each other. Once again, Vali began to get the upper hand. Sugriv looked around, waiting for Shri Ram to help. And this time, Shri Ram had no doubt which one is Vali. He took an arrow, loaded it on his bow, pulled the bowstring hard, and sent off that arrow, which went whizzing like thunder and struck Vali on the chest. And Vali crashed to the ground. When they came up to him, Vali was dying. But he still asked Ram these biting questions. He said, "How could you? I was fighting my brother. I was not fighting you. I have not harmed you. I have not insulted you. I have no fight with your kingdom. Then why did you kill me? I thought that you follow Dharma and Satya. But you are a fraud." These were very strong accusations at Shri Ram. And Shri Ram told Vali, "I will tell you why I killed you. Your crime is what you have done to your younger brother's wife. A man is not allowed to have a physical relationship with his daughter, sister, and younger brother's wife. A younger brother is like a son, and his wife a daughter-in-law. By forcibly taking Ruma, while Sugriv is still alive, you have violated Dharma." And Shri Ram told him how the punishment for this crime was also seen in earlier instances. Shri Ram also said, "The Ikshvakus ensure that Dharma is not broken throughout the world. Bharat is our king. And as his representative in these lands, I cannot allow a crime like this to go unpunished." Essentially, Shri Ram was saying that Vali was a criminal and he had punished him for his crime. And then Vali said, "Yat tvamath tat tathaiva na samshayah." Without a doubt, what you say is correct. He realized that what Shri Ram had done was as per Dharma. Tara soon came out. She cried bitterly upon seeing her husband in that condition, on the verge of death. But even then, she did not blame Ram. She said, you have got the fruits of your actions, of throwing out your brother and forcibly taking Ruma. So clearly, whether it was Vali himself, or Tara, or Angad, none of them thought that Shri Ram had done anything wrong by giving Vali the punishment for that crime.
Context on Angad.
Angad is Vali's son. Yeah. He too came out with Tara. He will play an important role going ahead. Yes. Young boy. In fact, on his just as he's dying, Vali, after he says, "I'm convinced," he tells Ram, "Angad is still a young boy. Please take care of him."
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they conducted the last rites of Vali. Sugriv was feeling very guilty for the role that he had played in his mother's death. He started talking of killing himself or retiring and going back to Rishyamukh. But Lakshman is always very direct. He came up to him and said, "Ma bhuh balisha buddhi." He said, "Don't be silly. You're the king now." And so Sugriv became the king of the Vanaras.
How many years have they already spent in the Vanvas at this point?
13. So they are in their last year.
Okay. All this is happening in the last year.
In the last year. In fact, when Sita saw the golden deer, at that moment, just before she got abducted, she had already started thinking about what they would do when they go back to Ayodhya. So it had seemed like their Vanvas was almost over when Sita was kidnapped. And then Ravan gave her 12 months. Remember, he said, "I give you 12 months, accept my hand or else." Yeah.
Gotcha.
So now they had to look for Sita. However, they couldn't start on it right away. Ram said to Sugriv, "The rainy season is almost here, Chaturmas. It is impossible to travel during this season. The rivers are all in spate, overflowing with water. You can't cross them. And so we will start the search as soon as the skies have cleared." So Sugriv goes back to Kishkinda. Shri Ram and Lakshman settle down in a cave on Prasravangiri to wait out the rainy months. And then the rain clouds roll in. Maharishi Valmiki had earlier described Vasant Ritu, spring, and now he describes Varsha Ritu, the rainy season. So in this description of the Varsha Ritu, the rainy season, I want to show you one verse, one shlok. Let's see how much is packed into one shlok, 32 syllables.
Also, the context is roughly 12,000 BC.
Yes.
According to Nilesh Oksar's work.
Yes.
Now let's go ahead.
Navamasa dhritam garbham bhaskarasya gabhastibhi pītva rasam samudranam dyauh prasute rasayanam. The sky drinks the water from the ocean with the help of the sun's rays, stores it in its womb for 9 months, and then delivers the water back. This life-giving water, rasayanam. What beautiful imagery for the rainy season. Even here you can see the summer months, the land is hot, dry, parched and dusty. And after the rains, there's new life, new birth. So a wonderful imagery of storing the water in the womb for 9 months and then delivering the water back, the rasayan, life-giving water. Also note here that Maharishi Valmiki has described the water cycle. You would remember this diagram from your school, right? The sun's rays strike the ocean and then water evaporates, stores in the clouds, and the clouds deliver the rainfall. And this is what he has described.
Wow. How many of these kind of paragraphs are there throughout the Valmiki text?
So, you mean about the rainfall?
I mean about just these little scientific anecdotes.
Yes, and see, he is not describing water cycle here. He is actually just describing rainfall in a very poetic way. But we can see it's the water cycle. And it's many times these are the hidden things. For example, there is another description where you can infer that he knows that the earth is round and not flat. All, these thousands of years back. Does he say that? No, but you can infer. If he has to do that imagery, then there must have been knowledge that the earth is round.
Gotcha.
So such are the descriptions of the rainy season. But again, for Shri Ram, there is no joy in all this. He worries for Sita. And then the 4 months pass by.
Nothing is said about Sita Maa at this point? Her reality?
In the Kishkinda Kand, not much. So Shri Ram is coming and, he has come to meet Sugriv. And now he has formed an alliance with him. We will meet Sita Maa in the Sunderkand when Hanuman goes there.
Okay.
Once the skies are cleared, there is still no sign of Sugriv. Because he is busy. He's busy having a good time. He's partying day and night with many women in his palace. Viharantam ahoratram vigatajwaram. And Ram's patience is running out. He tells Lakshman, "These 4 months have been like 100 years for me. Sita is in that terrible condition, and we are wasting time here. I think my friend Sugriv has forgotten what he has promised to do. Go and remind him." Lakshman goes to meet Sugriv, but he is lying drunk, out of his senses, knocked out. His people wake him up with great difficulty. He has red eyes and he is not very coherent. He tells Tara to go and calm Lakshman, calm him down a little bit and get him inside. Lakshman then comes in and he tells Sugriv, "You are having a good time here, aren't you? You got what you wanted from Ram, and now you are not bothered to do what you promised to do. But don't forget what he is capable of." Sugriv then jumped down from his throne and he said, "Please forgive me. I am always at Ram's service. I can never forget what he has done for me." And then Sugriv sprang into action. He gave orders for the Vanaras from all lands, from mountains and forests in different parts of this land, to all gather in Kishkindha. And then Valmiki describes that millions of Vanaras came to Kishkindha from the Vindhyas, from the western seacoast, and all the way to Himalayas. So sometimes we wonder whether Vanaras were only in southern India or the region of Hampi. Not so. They were present in all the forests and the mountains. And following Sugriv's command, they came to Kishkindha. And then Sugriv gave them orders to go and look for Sita in the 4 directions. So he made 4 teams, one for each direction, north, south, east and west. And here Valmiki takes a very interesting turn. To each team, he tells them what they will find as they go further and further in that direction. And essentially, in these sargas, Maharishi Valmiki has described what must perhaps be the oldest world atlas.
Probably the most interesting part of our episode with Nilesh Oksar as well. Like,
he has studied this in great detail, the locations.
Gives you a visualization of the Earth from 12,000 BC.
Yes.
I have to recap one aspect of one of the episodes with Nilesh Oksar. You were speaking about the east direction in
yes,
this part of our episode. I think he's also described the Pacific Ocean beyond Japan. He said that, I think he called it the Great Ocean or something along those lines. And he said that at the edge of the Great Ocean, you'll find a mountain with a trishul drawn on it. And that exact mountain is still there. You can still see a trishul drawn on it. And what Nilesh Oksar said is that he went to South America. And if you actually ask the local tribes in that region about that mountain with the trishul, they say that they don't know where it came from, but their ancestors have passed on the message that this trishul has always been there. That's what I find crazy.
Yes.
Effectively, the Ramayana from back then was describing a part of South America. And that trishul still existed. And they've also spoken in detail about South America. But this is a part of the Nilesh Oak episode. So I recommend viewers go check that one out after you're done with this particular episode. But from this part of the Valmiki Ramayana, for me at least, so many tiny excerpts like this give you a very, very detailed and very, very mind-bending visualization of what the earth and what world culture was back then.
Yes. I'll give you some examples. Sometimes for some of the references, we can match to today's locations easily. Sometimes it is more difficult. You can approximate, you have reasonable confidence. For example, he talks of Yavadvipa, which is the island of Java. Yava is Java, Dvipa island. Further in the eastern direction, we are somewhere in Southeast Asia. He talks of a river called Shona. Shona means red. And he says that the waters of this river are fast flowing and reddish in color. Rakta jalam shigravahinam. This is most likely the Red River which passes through Hanoi in Vietnam.
Wow.
Even today, it is reddish-brown in color and it floods very often. Further east, he talks of some people who inhabit islands. And Maharishi Valmiki says, through Sugriv's words, that the people are yellow-skinned, pleasant-looking people who eat raw fish. Sounds familiar?
Japan?
Yes. Most likely. So Sugriv gives orders to all these 4 teams. But the A team is for the southern direction because that's where most likely Sita is. Remember, Jatayu had seen them going south. Sugriv had also seen Ravan going further south. So Angad is leading the team and Jambavan and Hanuman are also in that team. Sugriv pulled Hanuman aside and he said, if there's one person who can do this, it's you. I'm counting on you. And Shri Ram gave Hanuman his ring, which had his name inscribed on it, and said, when you meet Sita, show this to her. She'll know that you come as a friend. And then the 4 teams set out, roaring with confidence. They went out, but within 1 month, by the way, Sugriv had given this time limit. You must come back in a month. Within a month, the north, east and west teams came back. They had found no sign of Sita. The south team was in trouble. They had lost their way for some time. And not only had they not found Sita, but they had also not covered the area that they were supposed to look. So they were in trouble. They were somewhere on the eastern sea coast, sitting around, dejected, unsure what to do next. Just then they came across Sampati, Jatayu's elder brother. And he told them that he has seen Sita in Lanka. And he told them the way to get there. Once again energized, they came south to the point from which they had to cross over the ocean. But when they looked at it, the vast expanse, all the way to the horizon and much beyond, this is what they had to cross, how to go across. The distance was 100 yojanas. How much is a yojana? Now, in terms of today, the conversion factor is not exactly known because this conversion has actually changed over time. But just so that you can get a sense for this distance, Ayodhya was 12 yojanas long. And now we are talking of 100 yojanas. So it was a very long distance. The Vanaras were looking at the sea and they were stumped how to go across. Angad, who was the leader, asked them, who can go across? No one spoke up. He said, Bruvadvam, Yasyaya Shakti Plavane. Speak up. Who can go how far? And then somebody said, I can go 40 yojanas. Somebody said 50. And then 60, 70, 80. Jambavan said, I can do 90 yojanas. And no more. Angad said, I can do 100 yojanas. But I'm not sure I can come back. In all this, Hanuman was sitting quietly. Jambavan asked him, Tushni me kantamashritya Hanuman kinna jalpasi. Why don't you say something, Hanuman? Why are you sitting by yourself? Hanuman could do it. But Jambavan needed to inspire him and remind him of who he was. Let's watch a short video on Jambavan's inspiring words and how Hanuman rises up to the challenge.
Would you like to set any context on Jambavan?
Jambavan was an elderly senior forest dweller. Interestingly, he did not dress up as a Vanar. So he was a Raksha. These were forest dwellers who dressed up like bears.
Gotcha. And that culture still exists in Russia.
Huh.
Right? Bear culture. Where they also dress up as
I see.
Okay, we'll move on to the video.
Yes.
Once when you were just a little boy, you thought that the rising sun was some fruit. You jumped up to try and grab it. And what a leap it was. But unfortunately, You fell and broke your jaw, Hanu, and thus your name, Hanuman. And that day, despite your injury, you never even flinched. You were so brave that Indra blessed you. You will only die when you wish to, not otherwise. So, what are you afraid of? This Vanar army is waiting to see your valor. Uttishta Harishardula Langhayasva Maharnavam. Arise, O greatest of Vanaras. Go forth across the ocean. And then Hanuman began to rise. He realized once again who he was, what he was capable of. The Vanaras roared and cheered him. They praised him, and their praise gave him even more confidence. He began to glow radiantly. He stretched and readied himself like a lion stretching his body. Hanuman's poise was reflecting his growing confidence and determination. Valmiki poetically says, it seemed as though he was physically growing bigger. And then Hanuman thundered, I am the son of Vayu. I am powerful and unstoppable like him. I will push back the sea waters with my arms. I will strike the ocean with my legs. Bahuvega pranunnena, urjangha vegena. I see clearly. I shall soon meet Sita. I can go to Lanka without a doubt. Hanuman was bursting with confidence. Here Valmiki has shown us the power of narrative, how our beliefs about who we are, our self-image, can critically impact what we do. The Vanaras were amazed and delighted to see Hanuman fired up like this. Jambavan said, by the blessings of the rishis and the elders, may you be successful. Hanuman then took a few steps and launched himself towards Lanka. Valmiki poetically says that when he leapt, so great was the impact that the trees shook violently. Rocks came tumbling down the mountainsides. Streams of water gushed out. Birds flew away, and the deer and elephants ran about terrified. And Hanuman had brought the entire focus of his mind on only one thing: getting to Lanka. Jagama Lankam Manasa Manasvi. And with those words, the fourth book of the Valmiki Ramayana comes to an end. Kishkinda Kandam Sampurnam.
Action movie.
Yes.
Wow.
And with that leap, he has set off towards Lanka. And now begins the fifth book of the Ramayana, the Sunderkand.
Wow. Goosebumps. Because perhaps this is one of the most impactful stories from the world of Sanatan Dharma that's impacted every kid who's ever heard the Ramayana. Because it teaches you self-confidence,
Yes.
right? I have one question before we move forward. Okay, because I remember reading the Ramcharitramanas version of the Kishkinda Kand. And even the Rasaraj Maharaj Sunderkand that you have available on YouTube and Spotify and all these streaming sites always speaks about the fierce love that Hanuman Ji felt for Shri Ram. Is that mentioned up to this point? Or is it a love that developed as they went into battle together and as they got to know each other more deeply?
Clearly that developed over time, right? So their first meeting was when he had gone down to meet them, when Sugriv had sent him. That was their first meeting, and even then, Shri Ram was also very impressed. In fact, as they were coming up, he said to Lakshman, anyone who has an ambassador like that is a very fortunate king. He was very impressed with Hanuman. And remember, he gave his ring to Hanuman because he also thought out of everyone, if there's anyone who can do this, it is Shri Hanuman. And likewise, Hanuman's respect for Shri Ram, and later on we'll see towards Sita as well, when he meets her, grows as their interactions develop.
Yeah. I want to say something slightly mind-bending. I genuinely believe in Nilesh Oksar's work. Okay, and if he's dating the Ramayana to about 12,000 BC, I also hosted Rupa Bhati on the show, who studied the Rig Veda, and she takes that timeline back to 200,000 BC, 2 lakh years ago. For me, Sanatan Dharma seems very, very incomplete without Hanuman Ji. But the truth is, if these timelines are to be believed, we've only had Hanuman Ji as one of our key deities for the last 14,000 years or so. I have so many tangential questions about Hanuman. So the question I have for you, sir, is we were just speaking about whether or not you're going to do the same kind of research with the Mahabharata. But you said that I don't know. I'm too deeply immersed in the Ramayana right now. I'm still understanding it. You're still
Yes.
studying it. Is your understanding of Hanumanji also evolving as you're moving forward?
Like all aspects of the Ramayana, we spoke about this earlier as well. The more you study it, the deeper you go, and the more inspiring you find it. So Shri Hanuman's character as well. Yes, there are the grand moments which we appreciate and are inspired in the first reading. For example, crossing over to Lanka, which we will see now. Nobody else could do it, and Shri Hanuman did it. Very inspiring. We'll soon see that. But also, the way he speaks to Sita in that fragile condition later on, his thoughtfulness in every moment is something that you appreciate as you study it more and more.
Yeah. In any version of the Ramayana, even the animated Japanese one, when you read like the Ramcharitamanas, the moment Hanumanji appears in the text, the energy of your own mind changes. Like as we are speaking right now, the energy of the room is so different. And he's with us in every episode.
Yes.
But when you're specifically speaking about him, there's a very different calming energy almost in the room.
Shri Hanuman has a very special place in our hearts. And also, think about it, we are, reading Ramasya Ayanam, Ramayanam, Ram's journey, Ram's story. And now in Sunderkand, we are going to Lanka without Shri Ram. The main character is Shri Hanuman.
Yeah. One last thing before we move on. Rajarshi Nandi sir, who's one of my absolute all-time favorite Tantra guests on the show, he said that when it comes to Sanatan Dharma, any deity with the face of an animal, so that's Ganpati, Hanumanji, Narsingh, Varaha or Varahi, any deity with the face of an animal is more easily accessible through their mantras. They're closer to earthly realms and they come to help you much quicker. Always felt that about Hanumanji as well. That's what they say, right? When you're saying anything about the Ramayana, when you're reciting the Ramayana, he's present in the room. So that's all I have to say while moving forward. One tiny question for you. Do you feel a difference in the energy when Valmiki is writing about Hanumanji?
I find that whenever I'm reading the Sunderkand, it is my favorite one. But likewise, whenever I'm reading the Ayodhya Kand, it is my favorite one. All of these Kands are special in their own way.
How do you feel when you're reading the Sunderkand?
Sunderkand is about inspiring. Never give up. Even in your darkest moments, you can draw inspiration that there is a way to come out of it.
Jai Hanuman.
Jai Hanuman.
Okay, let's move forward.
So with that, he has just taken a leap to go across the 100 yojanas to Lanka. Now, what is the image that usually comes to your mind when we talk about Hanuman going to Lanka?
Flying over the ocean.
Flying over the ocean. We've seen that in so many, paintings, temple walls.
Water flying in both directions.
Yes.
Some demons trying to stop him. I'm absolutely dominating those demons.
Right. So, we have just seen, he also said, I will push back the sea waters with my arms. I will strike the ocean with my legs. At the end of Kishkinda Kand, he said that. So what was it? Flying, leaping, or swimming? The first sarga of the Sunderkand is the longest one of the Ramayana. And in this sarga, Hanuman goes to Lanka. And Maharishi Valmiki has described this journey in great detail. And his words are clear that Hanuman swam to Lanka. He describes his swimming technique in greater detail.
Wow.
So it was very similar to what we now call the butterfly stroke. Hanuman would throw both his arms out into the air, push back the water. He would also kick with his legs. And he would put his head down into the water, come out, and open his mouth to breathe. So that was the swimming technique. I want to show you some specific verses which talk about this.
Sure.
Tasyam baragatau bahu, dadrishate prasaritau, parvatagrad vinishkrantau, panchasya vivapannakau. Hanuman would throw both his hands out into the air. It seemed as though a pair of 5-headed snakes had emerged from a mountain. Pibanniva babhau chapi, sormijalam maharnavam, pipasuriva chakasham, dadrishe sa mahakapihi. It seemed as though the great Vanar wanted to drink the entire ocean. And then he looked up to the sky as though he was still thirsty. In simple words, he would put his head into the water and then come out, look up, and open his mouth.
Is there anything that's said about his increase in size?
Yes. So even earlier, at the end of Kishkindakand, there is a talk of him increasing in size. Now, the question is that real or is that poetic? During the journey also, Maharshi Valmiki talks about him increasing in size to overcome a particular challenge. Now, if you say that this is real, right, perhaps he had some powers to increase his size. For one particular challenge, he actually increased his size up to 100 yojanas. Okay, now if it was real, would he need to fly or swim? He could have stepped across. Clearly, this is poetic. Increasing in size is increasing in determination and confidence. And reducing in size is about doing things nimbly with a lot of flexibility.
In stealth?
Yeah. Now, together with this swimming technique, the beauty of Valmiki's poetry is such, we know he went swimming, but the image left in our mind is of Hanuman flying through the sky. And the reason that happens is, at the end of Kishkindakand, you saw that when Hanuman took a leap, this huge exaggeration that the mountains shook and rocks tumbled down, etc. Valmiki says that the force of his leap was such that because of that there was a strong wind. And the wind carried the flowers onto the sea. And then the sea, which was covered with flowers, looked like the starry sky. There's also a shlok on this. Tara chitam ivakasham prabhabhau samaharnavaha. And then the great ocean looked like the starry sky. So with this transition, he now starts looking at the sea as though it is the sky. So when Hanuman went in and out of the water, he talks of him. Hanuman is like the moon that is going in and out of clouds. So there's vivid description of Hanuman in the sky after this transition.
Wow.
And some people wonder whether this was due to any yogic powers. Now, Maharshi Valmiki has not mentioned any yogic powers. Also, some people ask whether there was any personal flight technology, the way Ravan had Vimans. But once again, in Maharshi Valmiki's description, it starts with the actual description of the swimming technique, and then the transition, and then the descriptions of flight.
Gotcha.
And this was a grueling test. See, other Vanars could also do what Hanuman was doing. They couldn't do it for 100 yojanas. So they could do it for 40, 50 or up to 80 yojanas. But only Hanuman could do it. He faced many challenges, but in the end, he did reach the other shore and he had achieved the impossible.
What are the challenges that are spoken about?
One of the challenges is that Hanuman is challenged by Surasa, a serpent. Essentially, Hanuman was drawn into a whirlpool into the sea and he tried to swim out, but the currents were too strong. And finally, he had to go through the eye of the whirlpool. Essentially, Surasa, the serpent, said that I have a boon and you must go through my mouth. And so Hanuman reduced himself in size and went through Surasa's mouth or the mouth of the whirlpool. He was also attacked by a Rakshasi called Simhika. that part of the ocean, even today, has what we call the saltwater crocodile. It is a huge beast at the top of the food chain, so an apex predator, and therefore the right name, Sinhika. Right? And Hanuman was able to overcome her as well.
Wow. Do you think that Ravan's Lanka is the same as Sri Lanka?
Yes,
That's your conclusion.
that's my conclusion.
Okay.
And I know that, there are, for example, Nilesh Oak has a different conclusion. And I respect and admire his work. Essentially, see, the research related to this, you collect all the data points that are there in the Ramayana, and then you have to figure out the best fit many times, because there could be conflicting data points. You're an engineer, so you know that when you collect data points, you draw a line of best fit, right? Every point may not fall on that line, but what is it that best describes it? And then sometimes you have to decide, what do you put more weightage on? So, for example, if you put more weightage on the sea levels at the time of the Ramayana, then that points in a slightly different direction. But if you look at it from this point of view, that Hanuman went swimming, which is described in great detail. So it couldn't have been 1,000 kilometers or something more. And even today, you can see the island of Lanka, and you can see the islands, the Ram Setu that go up to it, and so on. So I think, for me, the conclusion I have taken, in these videos as well as in my analysis, that today's Sri Lanka is the Lanka of Ramayana.
So 100 yojanas would be the distance between Kanyakumari and Sri Lanka?
Not Kanyakumari. From Rameshwaram, you go to the edge, Dhanushkodi, from there to Sri Lanka.
Rameshwaram is your starting point.
Rameshwaram is a little inland. If you go right up to the tip, it is Dhanushkodi today.
Gotcha.
Sea levels would have changed a little bit in all of these, so it could be slightly different at that time. So not at the southern tip. It is a little north and east, which is the closest point to Sri Lanka.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
Huh.
Understood.
So Hanuman made it to the other side. He then walked inland and came to the city of Lanka. It was a spectacular sight. Built on a mountain, the city seemed to be touching the sky. At the base, it was surrounded by a moat and a boundary wall. Even the boundary wall was inlaid with gold. It was an incredibly well-built city. It exuded power, grandeur, and wealth. And there were many Rakshasas protecting and guarding the boundary wall and the gates. Hanuman decided to wait for nightfall, and then when it was dark, he slipped over the boundary wall and went inside. Valmiki has given a detailed description of Lanka at night. The city was well laid out, like Ayodhya, with broad avenues. It had mansions 7 and 8 stories high, sapta bhaumashta bhaumaishcha, and the mansions were also decorated with gold, silver, crystals. The city dazzled in the moonlight. Truly, it was Sone ki Lanka, city of gold. And what Hanuman saw breaks a lot of stereotypes also, or misconceptions about the Rakshasas. I want to share some of these with you. Right in the beginning, when I had spoken in our first discussion, I mentioned Rakshasas, and you said, are they demons? And I said, hold on. Let's hear what Maharishi Valmiki has said. Because if you say demons, it gives a particular imagery. Right? Even today, if you ask someone, a child, to draw a Rakshas, he may draw it with horns or, hideous looking creatures. Valmiki says, the Rakshasas of Lanka were Virupan, Surupan, Bahurupan. Some were hideous, others were very handsome. They came in all forms. Some wore very nice clothes. And the Rakshasas were not a different race. Another misconception I want to clarify. The Rakshasas were not a different race. Even Ravan's father was a rishi. He was not a Rakshas. His mother was a Rakshasi, and he considered himself as part of the Rakshas community, the Rakshas clan. Earlier also, Tataka, Virad, they were not born as Rakshasas. So this has nothing to do with race. Also, the Rakshas society, also its roots were Vedic. So they were not, their cultural roots were the same as those of Ayodhya and the other cities.
And the Vanaras.
And the Vanaras, yes. At its core, right? In Lanka, Hanuman heard people reciting the Vedas. He saw Vedic altars and shrines. He saw images of Lakshmi. And on many Rakshas houses, he also saw the swastik symbol, the ancient symbol of auspiciousness. Raksho gana gruhaihi shubhaihi padma swastika samsthitaihi. So clearly, fight with the Rakshasas was not a fight between one race and another. It was not a fight between Vedic and non-Vedic societies. Right? This becomes very clear when we hear about the Rakshas, about Lanka's description through Hanuman's eyes. Hanuman looked for Sita in different parts of the city. And then finally he came to the highest point of the city, where he found a grand palace. This was clearly Ravan's palace. It was a complex of buildings, once again protected by a boundary wall. Hanuman slipped across the boundary wall and went inside. It had some open areas and also some halls, inner halls. What Hanuman saw in the outer courtyards is very interesting. He saw horses and elephants, and some of the elephants had 2 and 3 tusks, some had 4 tusks. Varanaishcha chaturdantaihi. Now this is a very interesting clue from a dating point of view, because the 4-tusked elephant got extinct thousands of years back. So this clearly points towards the 12,000 marker rather than the 500 or 1000 BC marker, the 4-tusked elephant. And in the courtyards, Hanuman also saw many vehicles, chariots, as well as vimans. So the flying vehicles, vimans, Ravan had not only one, the Pushpak Viman was the greatest of them all, but he had many of them, and they were parked like a parking lot in his palace complex. Hanuman went into the inner chambers. There were many banquet halls where he saw wine spilt on the floor, different kinds of meats, half-eaten plates. And then finally he came to Ravan's bedchamber. It was a massive hall dedicated to the pleasures of the senses. There were hundreds of women lying around. They had all dozed off after much drinking.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Pleasure hall. Same as the bedroom.
Yes.
What is described?
So these women, their hair was disheveled. Some of their clothes had partially slipped off. They had obviously been drinking a lot. They had been playing musical instruments. So singing, dancing. Yeah. And in the middle of it all was Ravan's magnificent bed. He was also sleeping. And even on his bed, he had company. There were beautiful ladies sleeping on his bed. And Valmiki says, who were these women? So Valmiki says that many of them had been captured as spoils of war by Ravan after battles. So clearly, when he abducted Sita, this was not the first time he had done any such thing. In fact, he was very proud of it. He had told Sita as well, I have captured all these women from different lands, itastataha, from here and there, and you will be the chief among them. That's what he was offering Sita. So many of them had been captured. Valmiki says some of them had come of their own will as well.
Tiny pause. I'm very curious about what Rakshas society was in the first place. We spoke about Vanars. We said that they're basically forest dwellers. And it's likely that they were putting on gear that made them eventually look like monkeys. Similarly, do you think that the Rakshasas were a clan? Right? And the capital was Lanka.
Yes. So the Rakshas community, the king was Ravan.
Yeah.
Their capital was Lanka. They had another power center at Janasthan, which Ram had destroyed last time, near Panchavati.
Near Panchavati.
Yes.
Which is...
Remember Khar, Khar and his 14,000 Rakshasas that Ram killed.
Mumbai of back then. Right? For
Yeah,
all you know, we might...
close to Mumbai, yes.
And when we're speaking about the battles that Ravan went about, this is... What do you think? Is it all over the globe?
Most likely what we are talking about is in the vicinity of this land between the Himalayas and the sea.
Subcontinent.
Yes, and a few islands around that as well.
Okay, gotcha. Now let's move forward.
And you were talking of the Rakshas society. So picturize it like this. Even when Hanuman came in, see, by now the women had all dozed off, right? But when he came into the city, it was just after dark. The party was on. There was music and laughter everywhere. This was clearly a very wealthy city, well organized, and the Rakshasas were having a good time.
You know, in the section about Sugriv, you spoke about how post beating Vali, he was in a bit of a party phase for 3 months.
Yes.
And here we're also speaking about a party phase. Is alcohol mentioned in both the...
Oh, definitely, very clearly, repeatedly.
Same kind of alcohol?
Most likely not, because the Vanaras had alcohol made of honey, which was the forest produce. And here, most likely, it would have been some sort of a fermented fruit wine.
So, alcohol and partying are mentioned, and clearly in Ravan's bedroom, there is some kind of mentions about sexuality.
A lot had been going on. In fact, when Hanuman sees all this in Ravan's bedchamber, he comes to the conclusion that the Sita Ram had told him about cannot be in a place like this. And he says, I must look for her elsewhere. And he comes out of the bedchamber. But before we leave here, one interesting point. Valmiki has described Ravan's sleeping form. And here, clearly, he talks of 1 head and 2 arms, not 10 head and 20 arms. Hanuman came out and looked through the rest of the palace, everywhere, in the basement rooms, on terraces. And when he did not find Sita, he started going into a loop of negativity. He started imagining one bad thing after another. He thought to himself, has Ravan killed Sita? Or perhaps she has killed herself. If I go back and report this, how will Ram be able to survive? He cannot live without Sita. And then what about Lakshman? Right? So he is getting paralyzed with these thoughts. And he thinks that he has reached the end of the road. He even considers taking his own life. But then he reminds himself, Vinashe bahavo doshah jivan prapnoti bhadrakam. Killing oneself is not correct. Only if one is alive will things take a turn for the better. I must focus on doing. And he pulls himself out of that negative loop. And when he thinks about everything where he has gone, he realizes that there's one place he has not yet looked, which is the walled garden near Ravan's palace. And so he goes over the boundary wall of the garden and goes inside. It's a beautiful garden, true to its name, Ashoka, that which takes away all sorrow. He goes around looking for Sita. Hanuman climbs up a tree. And then in the distance, he sees a lady wearing old and dirty clothes. She's covered with dust. She's pale, emaciated. She's obviously not been eating well. And she's surrounded by Rakshasis and she looks scared. But even in that condition, there is something special about her. Hanuman thinks, is this Sita? And then he realizes that the clothes she is wearing, although they are old, they match the cloth in which the jewels had been wrapped. And also she looks like the lady that had dropped those jewels. He had finally found Sita. Hanuman shed tears of joy. But he was also pained on seeing the great princess in that condition. Ashoka vanika madhye shokasagaram aplutam. in the Ashok garden, which takes away all sorrow. Sita was drowning in shok, grief. Sita's condition. This has been about 10 months in captivity. In many popular productions, perhaps this does not come through fully. What all she has endured. Torture, torment, trying to get her to say yes. And she's lying there, covered with dust, but still holding on to her faith in Shri Ram.
Is anything said about the torture?
Well, she keeps saying that the Rakshas torment her. Remember, Ravan had told the Rakshas guarding her, break her will, like she is like a wild elephant. So, torment her and then be nice to her. Use both approaches. Hanuman is waiting for a chance to speak with Sita. And then the sun comes up. And soon Ravan shows up. And with him are some of the ladies that had given him company the previous night. Sita sees Ravan coming and she starts shaking with fear. She hugs her knees. Ravan comes up to her, his eyes full of passion, and he looks at her, his gaze lingering on every part of her body. Sita wants to make herself invisible, but there's no getting away from Ravan's gaze. Ravan then says, "The Creator must have taken retirement after he made you. You are so beautiful. There is no one as beautiful as you. Oh Sita, why don't you accept me? I am hopelessly in love with you. Be mine, and I will lay down the world at your feet. You will be the queen of Lanka. Why do you still think of Ram? There's no way he can get you out of here." Sita's answer. In spite of everything that she has gone, in spite of the fact that she's shaking with fear, she's firm in her answer. She places a blade of grass between herself and Ravan. And addressing the blade, she gives the answer. Ravan is not even going to get a look from her. She says, "Stop thinking of me and let me go. I am inseparable from Ram, like light from the sun. Apologize to Ram. I am telling you what's good for you. If you don't let me go, Ram will surely find me and he will kill you." Now that's not the answer Ravan wanted to hear. So things start to escalate from here. Once again, let's see a short video on this.
If you are so strong and brave, why did you have to trick Ram and Lakshman away from the hut in Panchavati? Why did you not fight them? You cannot face them. Just as a dog cannot stand up to two tigers. Shakyam sandarshane sthatum shuna shardulayoreva. Ravan replied menacingly, "I am being nice to you, and you are insulting me. You ought to be put to death right now. But I am holding back my anger because I am in love with you. Tvau masau rakshitavyau me yo vadhiste maya kritah tatashayanamaroha mamatvam varavarnini." As per the deadline I had fixed before, you have 2 more months. Oh pretty one, climb into my bed, or else I will send you off to the kitchen to be chopped up and cooked for my breakfast. Sita fired back, "You wretch! How come your tongue that says such things does not fall out of your mouth? Your end is certain. Ram will come and his arrows will knock the life out of you. You don't stand a chance against him. He is powerful like an elephant, and you are a rabbit. This was Sita's incredible power. Months of torment and suffering could not break her. No temptation could lure her. Ravan could not break her will, nor shake her confidence in Ram. Ravan, his eyes rolling with anger, hissed, "Sita, I will destroy you." And he raised his right fist to punch Sita. Mushtimudyamya dakshinam maithilim hantumarabdha. But a Rakshasi quickly came forward to defuse the situation. She embraced Ravan and said, "Why are you after that wretched Sita? Come with me. Let's have some fun." And she drew him away. Ravan went back to his palace, laughing heartily with his many women, and leaving behind a trembling Sita. Pravepamanam dharmaparam avasthitam. Trembling but steadfast on the path of dharma. Iti her asa. That is how it happened.
Intense.
Yes.
Do you think he was a cannibal?
The Rakshasas ate human flesh. In fact, the Rakshasis surrounding Sita also threatened her very clearly. "We are going to cut you up." They brought some axes and so "We'll cut your body up right now and chop you up into pieces." And they were discussing who will eat which part and that they should divide the parts equally and so on.
Any other mentions of cannibalism throughout the text?
About Rakshasas, yes, many times.
Wow.
So Ravan had gone back and the Rakshasis got back to the work that he had given them. They started trying to convince her, torment her, threaten her. But Sita's answer remained the same. She said, "I will never accept Ravan. I will not even touch him with my foot. Why doesn't he get it? My answer is no." Sita's answer and her faith in Shri Ram is incredible. See, she doesn't know whether he even knows that she's here. And so, although she has clearly said that she will not accept Ravan, she does swing between hope and despair as to whether Ram will come to save her or not. She's very confident that if he knew, he would surely come. But does he even know I'm here? And then Sita starts to lose hope. She thinks that Ravan will definitely kill her because she will never accept him. So in 2 more months, her end is certain. So she thought of taking her own life and end it now itself. She thought of hanging herself from her own long braid. So she clutched the braid, went a little distance away from the Rakshasis, caught hold of a branch to tie her braid. But just then, there was a wave of hope. And she turned away. And that hope was not misplaced, because this was the tree on which Hanuman was sitting. And this was his chance. He could speak to her, but what could he say that would not frighten her? She was in a very fragile emotional state. And if he said something, she might shriek or run away, and that would alert the Rakshasis. So what could he say? What Hanuman did really shows off his presence of mind and intelligence. He started speaking in an indirect way. So he's sitting on the tree, Sita is looking away, and he starts to say, "There was once a great king in the Ikshwaku dynasty called Dashrath. His eldest son was Ram." And he starts narrating the story. Sita is listening to it. And he narrates it up to the point of her abduction. Sita knows this very well. And then Hanuman continues. He says, "Ram and Lakshman came south looking for Sita. They made an alliance with Sugriv, who is the king of the Vanaras. And now Sugriv has sent off thousands of Vanaras to look for Sita. I am one of them. I crossed the great ocean and I came here. And now I see in front of me
a lady who looks exactly like the Sita Ram had told me about. And then Hanuman stops. Think about it. Sita has just heard that thousands of people are looking for her. First of all, Ram and Lakshman are okay. And that thousands of people are looking for her, and one of them is right there on the tree. She looks up, and through the leaves, a Vanar looks back at her. And this is too much. She just faints. When Sita regained her consciousness, Hanuman climbed down from the tree and approached her. And he asked her, "Oh lady, are you Sita?" And now Sita's answer is, once again, it tells us a lot about Sita. There's also learning for us. Sita says, "I am the daughter-in-law of the great King Dashrath, the foremost among all the kings in the world. I am the daughter of King Janak. My name is Sita. I am Ram's wife." Note, she is giving her introduction, her identity as the daughter-in-law of the great King Dashrath. It all started with what her father-in-law Dashrath had done, those promises, and all her trouble started from there. But she holds nothing against him. She knew that he was trapped by his own words. Also, the day Ram, Lakshman and Sita left, Dashrath's last few days were not his best, right? He was a broken old man. But Sita remembers him for his best days. "I am the daughter-in-law of the great King Dashrath, the foremost among all the kings in the world." Hanuman was delighted to hear this. He said, "I am Hanuman, Ram's messenger." Sita was so happy to see him, but she had a doubt. And she said, "If you have met Ram, can you describe him for me?" And this is the place where Hanuman describes Shri Ram physically. You had asked me in our first conversation, is there any physical description of Shri Ram? So yes, there is one right at the beginning in the Balakand, and then here, through Hanuman's words. And then Hanuman gives Sita the ring that Ram had given him. And now Sita has no doubt. A wave of happiness swept over Sita. She held the ring and she felt Ram's presence. And finally she had someone she could call her own. She opened her heart out to Hanuman. They spoke for a long time. And then it was time for Hanuman to leave. Sita told him, "Please tell Ram, I cannot take this much longer. If he doesn't get here in 2 months, it will be all over for me." Sita also gave Hanuman an ornament as proof that he had met her. And she also told him about an incident that happened in Chitrakoot as further proof, because this incident, no one knew about it except Ram and Sita. Hanuman then asked her if she had any message for Lakshman. Now remember what she had last said to Lakshman, those hurtful and unfair words. This time as message, she says, "Please convey my regards to Lakshman. He is a quiet one, but he's always there for Shri Ram. He gave up everything to support him in exile. Pitruvad vartate Rame, matruvan mam samacharat." He treats Ram like a father, and he treats me like a mother. I'm sure he will come to my aid now. And then Hanuman took his leave. He had achieved what he had come out to do. But now he realized that a war with the Rakshasas was inevitable. And he thought that he should assess the strengths and weaknesses of the Rakshasas before heading back. And he should also try and weaken the enemy as much as possible.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm going to have to stop you there for a little bit. Want to know why didn't Sita Maa just go away with Hanuman Ji after the interaction?
Okay, in fact, Hanuman asks her, "Why don't you come with me?" And Sita gives multiple answers. Sita gives many reasons. She says,
you have the strength and energy to go across the ocean, and I do not. And if we try to run away, the Rakshasas will surely see us. And then how will you fight them while also carrying me on the back? Sita also felt that Ravan had tricked Ram away from the cottage and kidnapped her. And now Ram should defeat Ravan for what he had done. And she didn't want to run away like this. And finally, Sita still recoiled from the memory of Ravan's touch the day she had been kidnapped. You remember how Maharishi Valmiki had described that he had grabbed her by the hair, dragged her, picked her up. And she said, I still recoil from that memory and I don't want to touch any person other than Ram. But clearly the practical reason was she didn't have the energy to go across the 100 yojanas like Hanuman.
Gotcha. Okay.
So Hanuman thought, I have found Sita, but I must now weaken the enemy and I also must assess their strengths and weaknesses.
Is there anything written about his emotional state of mind? Because what you're relaying, it seems more practical and almost, for lack of better words, geopolitical here.
We see many different aspects of Shri Hanuman's thoughts. So he was at the lowest point in Ravan's palace when he didn't find Sita. He thought he had looked everywhere and he had not found her. And when he found Sita, he was overjoyed. So those were emotional aspects. But as soon as the job, that part was done, he started thinking practically towards the next steps, which was the war.
Gotcha. Okay.
All the characters of the Ramayana, we find that they are thinking and planning for the future. See, Sita dropped the ornaments even when she had just been kidnapped, but immediately she started thinking, what else can I do to leave some clues? Hanuman has just completed what nobody else could do. He had found Sita, but now he's thinking of the war. And so Hanuman did something that was sure to enrage Ravan. He destroyed the Ashokvan. He uprooted trees, broke down branches, breached the ponds. And when Ravan heard about this, he sent some of his ferocious warriors to tackle Hanuman, to deal with him. The Rakshasas attacked Hanuman and soon they were all dead. Hanuman fought with whatever he had, crowbars, rocks, and so on. Ravan sent another group, and again another group. Every time the result was the same. The Rakshasas lay dead. And finally, Ravan sent his son Meghnad, also known as Indrajit, for he had defeated Indra. Indra and Hanuman fought ferociously until finally Indrajit used his Brahmastra and trapped and snared Hanuman, then tied him up with ropes and victoriously dragged him back to the court. In the court, one of the Rakshas generals asked him, "Who are you? Why are you here?" Hanuman looked at Ravan and said, "O king of the Rakshasas, I wanted an audience with you. And to get your attention, I destroyed the Ashokvan. Your people attacked me and I killed them in self-defense." And then Hanuman continued, "I am Ram's envoy, ambassador." Ram was staying in the Dandak forest together with his wife, Sita, and brother Lakshman. And one day Sita went missing. See, Hanuman does not start aggressively with Ravan. He starts off in a mild manner. He says, Sita went missing. Ram has formed an alliance with Sugriv, the king of the Vanaras. Thousands of Vanaras are looking for her. I am one of them. I came here and saw her in your garden. Now you know very well that keeping Sita here is not right. Let her go. And then Hanuman's tone changed. He spoke more forcefully. He said, remember what happened in Janasthan. The entire Rakshas force was wiped out by Ram. He said, remember what happened there. Don't let the same happen here. There has never been, nor will ever be, anyone who can defeat Ram. Let Sita go. Don't tie the noose of death around your neck." Ravan exploded in anger. He ordered, "Kill him!" But his younger brother, Vibhishan, stepped in, and he reminded Ravan that an envoy, an ambassador, can never be killed. He said, "Of course, what this Vanar has done should not go unpunished, but you can give him some other punishment." Ravan then thought about it, and he had a wicked idea. He said, "Kapinang kilalangulam ishtam bhavati bhushanam." This tail that the Vanars wear as an ornament is very dear to them. See, once again, he's calling it an ornament, something that they could take off. But he said it's very dear to them. So set fire to this Vanar's tail and take him around the city. This turned back on Ravan very badly. And we'll see this as well in a video.
Ravan's men quickly grabbed Hanuman, tied strips of cloth around his tail, dipped it in oil, and set it on fire. Hanuman's heart was burning with anger. Poetically, he grew his size like a forest fire fed with dry wood. The Rakshasas started pulling at his binds to parade him through the city. At first, Hanuman resisted. But then he thought, "I have seen Lanka at night. Now I must see the city during the day. Avashyameva drashtavya maya Lanka nishakshaye." And so, as the Rakshasas marched him through the streets and squares of the capital, Hanuman went happily along. By the way, if you are still not sure whether Hanuman's tail was real or something that he put on, consider this. First, Ravan clearly calls it an ornament, bhushanam. And second, when Hanuman's tail was set alight, he was physically not hurt. But yes, he was wild with rage, as he considered this a great insult. Crowds gathered and watched the spectacle with glee. Hanuman also watched, making careful observations. Some Rakshasis went and told Sita that the Vanar she had spoken to was being taken through the streets with his tail on fire. Sita's heart sank, and she prayed for Hanuman to come through this safely. When Hanuman reached the gates of the city, he saw his chance. There was not much of a crowd there. He deftly freed himself from the bonds, made a surprise attack on his captors, and within moments finished them off. Now he stood there alone, at the gates of Lanka, his tail burning. And he thought, "What else can I do that will strike at the hearts of these Rakshasas?" Hanuman had noticed earlier that the fire at the end of his tail was not reaching his body. The other end of his tail was not hot at all. It was like a fire torch. And he thought, "I shall use this torch to set fire to Lanka." By now, Hanuman knew the layout of the city very well. He headed for the quarters that had the mansions of the senior-most Rakshasas. He went from one building to the next, setting each one ablaze with his tail. And finally, he went into Ravan's palace complex and set it on fire too. A breeze was blowing, and the fire spread across the city. The flames leapt up, and molten gold flowed down from the walls. The palatial structures crackled in the blaze and tumbled to the ground. Hanuman roared. The Rakshasas ran around helter-skelter, trying to save their wealth and their lives. They looked at Hanuman and wondered fearfully, is he really a Vanar, or is he Yamraj, the Lord of Death? By now, the whole city was on fire. The giant blaze was radiant like 1,000,000 suns. It was like the fire of dissolution, the end of time. And soon, Hanuman had reduced the city of Lanka to ashes. Hanumata Lankapuram Pradagdham. Iti ha asa. That is how it happened.
So a big blow to the Rakshasas.
Military themed diplomat,
Yes.
right? You don't view him that way until you read the Valmiki Ramayana. You kind of visualize an ape-like divine being using his tail to burn the whole city.
Yes. Even here, notice which parts of the city did he go through.
The richer
The
parts.
houses of the senior most Rakshasas, these are the leaders. Let's strike fear in their hearts. Hanuman's strength and power is well known. But what a lot of these things bring out is also his intelligence, his diplomacy, war strategy, and also his singular focus on getting things done. I think his message is never give up. And that's what comes through in the Sunderkand. After this, Hanuman put out the fire on his tail, and as he looked at the smoldering ruins of Lanka, he was struck by a fear. What about Sita? What if she was injured, or worse, in this fire? He rushed back to the Ashokan. Thankfully, Sita was safe. And then he came back to the shore and then used the same technique that he had used earlier to go across the ocean.
Nothing said about Ravan's reaction?
No, not at to the burning of Lanka. No. Surely it was a big shock to him. You know, this journey across the ocean, earlier as well we spoke how there is the practical description of swimming, but also the image of him flying across the sky. If he could indeed fly, or there was some technology for flight, think about this. Would he not fly straight away from Ashokwan to Kishkinda? Why walk up to the shore, go across the ocean, and then walk further? So he swam back. The Vanaras were waiting for him. He went up to Angad and Jambavan and said, Drishta Devi, I met Sita. The Vanaras erupted in joy. This was mission accomplished. And then they all, by the way, when Hanuman was describing what all happened back in Lanka, it's interesting that when he spoke about Sita, he turned towards Lanka and bowed down respectfully. His meeting with Sita had created a deep impression on him. You were asking me earlier, how did the respect and the bond develop over time? He had been hugely impressed by how Sita was dealing with that terrible condition. And then they all came back, started on their way back towards Kishkinda. On the way, they came to a forest, which was very attractive and enticing for them. See, these were troops that had been out on the road for many months. They were exhausted and hungry. And in this forest, they had plenty of food and wine. This was Madhuvan. This was a special grove that belonged to Sugriv, the king's one. And the troops wanted to drink the wine. So they asked Angad for permission, and he consulted Jambavan and told them to go for it. So, yeah.
Geographically speaking, this is between Tamil Nadu and Karnataka.
Between Dhanushkodi or Rameshwaram in Tamil Nadu and Hampi in Karnataka. Somewhere in the middle. Close to Hampi by now.
Okay, got you.
So they went in and started drinking and eating. Again, Valmiki has described it, very interestingly. Gayanti kechit, prahasanti kechit, nrityanti kechit. Some were singing, others were laughing, some were dancing. They fought with each other, they abused one another, pushed each other, jumped up and down from rocks. And as usually happens after much drinking, they created a nuisance too. So they started destroying the Madhuvan, breaking trees, breaking pots. And the keeper of Madhuvan was one person called Dadimukh. Dadimukh first tried to convince them to stop. He scolded them. But instead of listening to him, they beat him up. And all his guards too. And they drank some more. Dadimukh thought that these guys, their days are numbered. He will go and report this back to Sugriv and tell him what is going on, and he will surely pronounce the death sentence on them. Dadimukh rushes back to Kishkinda. Sugriv is with Ram and Lakshman. He goes and reports what has happened. But to his utter shock, Sugriv says, I am delighted to hear that. I pardon them. Go and get them quickly. See, Sugriv had sent out 4 teams. The north, east and west teams had come back in a month. And they had not found Sita. And the south team was late. And now the first thing he hears is that they are destroying the king's forest and drinking. Sugriv knew his people well. So he knew what the celebrations meant. He turned to Ram and Lakshman and said the words that they had been waiting to hear. Drishta Devi, Nasandeha. Without a doubt, they have found Sita.
Why does no one tell us this story?
Soon, Angad and Hanuman and the others reached Kishkinda. Hanuman came up to Ram and said, Sita is safe. See, even in these small dialogues or actions, Hanuman's intelligence and thinking comes through. The first thing he had said to the Vanaras when he came was, I met Sita. But he knew what is the question on Sri Ram's mind. Is she okay? And so the first thing he said was, Sita is safe. Of course, Sri Ram wanted to hear it all. He asked, where is she? How is she? Tell me everything. What did she say? Hanuman then gave the ornament that Sita had given for Sri Ram. It was an ornament that she had worn on the day of their marriage. And once again, Ram was overcome with emotion. He said, Sita had looked so beautiful then, and now I have this ornament, but she is not with me. What else did she say? And then Hanuman told the story that Sita had told him, which no one else knew. He said, in Chitrakoot, once Sita was resting in your arms. You were both asleep. A crow suddenly attacked Sita, repeatedly attacked her on the chest. And when you woke up, you found that Sita was injured and the crow had blood on its claws. Sita says, you could not even tolerate that crow's minor offense against me. You had tried to kill the crow. In the end, you just injured it and let it go. But you could not tolerate that. Then why are you not saving me now? You are the greatest warrior in the world. If I mean anything to you, you will slay Ravan and destroy these Rakshasas. That was Sita's message. Just the message that would fire up Sri Ram. And Sita had also told Hanuman that she could not hold on much longer. Hanuman had said, take courage. Before long, you shall hear the roar of Vanaras. Kshipram drakshasi raghavam, Lakshmanam cha Lanka dwaram upagatam. Before long, you shall see Ram and Lakshman at the gates of Lanka. And with those words, the 5th book of the Ramayana, Sunderkand, comes to an end. Sundarakandam Sampurnam.
Itihasa.
Itihasa. That is how it happened.
Self-confidence would be the overarching theme here.
Belief in yourself. Yes.
On all levels. Ma Sita's level, Sri
Yes.
Ram's level, Hanuman Ji level, obviously.
Yes.
I think that's what the energy of this whole podcast was.
Yes.
And for me, it was dedicated to the Vanara sitting right next to you.
Yes.
as is this room. So, thank you. That's the end of episode 3 as well. Looking forward to the grand finale.
Thank you. And in the next episode, we will go back across the ocean. And, you may have heard the story of floating rocks, but in the Valmiki Ramayana, that is not how it happens. In fact, Sita also asks this question to Hanuman when he says, "We will all soon be back." But she says, "But how will you cross the ocean?" And at that time, Hanuman just says, "Oh, don't worry about it. If I could do it, the others can too." But we'll see what happens on the crossing of the ocean next time.
More to uncover.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. That was the episode for today, ladies and gentlemen. That was part 3 of our 4-part series. The finale releases in 2 days' time. I hope that this reaches every single Indian, because this retelling of Valmiki's Ramayana is the only accurate story of the Ramayana that may or may not already be known by you over the course of your life. This series has been made with an intention to reach every single Indian so that we move itihas or real Indian history forward through time. If you wish to experience an even more detailed version of this retelling, do visit Yashodeep sir's YouTube channel. It's called 21 Notes. It contains all the detailed episodes of the Ramayana. And if you're someone who enjoys the podcast form of this story, then wait for another couple of days for the series finale. If you haven't watched the first 2 episodes, I highly recommend you go check them out. They give you a very accurate version of that time period in India's history, which is supposedly said to be roughly around 14,000 years ago. Lots to learn from this entire series, and I hope that it reaches every single Indian. Lots of love to you. Lots of love to Yashodeep sir. And until next time, guys, Jai Shri Ram.